been browsing, treading water that they drowning. My head on a swivel, yeah. It's only really my surroundings.
Hello and welcome to episode 67 of the Smash Accept podcast. We are back, baby. You know, it's been a 2-week hiatus here. I kind of went, actually 3 weeks, the longest we've ever had. I went into a little bit of hiding because some of my teams, you know, my guys contracted COVID and, you know, lost in the semis. Then I got COVID last week. And, you know, I'm growing the beard out. You probably can't tell. But it's been a crazy couple of weeks here. I kind of feel like Will Ferrell in Anchorman when he's like walking down the street drinking the milk. But Smash team, assemble. You know, John, haven't seen you for a while. How you doing, brother? Can you hear me, John?
Oh, so good to be back. Riding high. You know, I might just start by saying, hey, for the listeners out there, I was the Smash Accept Listener League champ, so that felt really good.
Of course, we were going to get that out there right away, right?
Yeah, I had to just go ahead and lead with that one. I don't know how to say this, but kind of a big deal. Let's keep going with your Anchorman thing there. No, that was a fantastic league. I know we're going to have most of our listeners tuning in, and just want to say again, what an awesome league. More trades than I've ever been a part of in any single league, and just so active and so competitive. Those 14-team leagues, we're just talking about it, are pretty rough. And so I'm hopefully going to be able to defend the title next year, but I'm hearing that's going to be tough. Anyways.
Well, congratulations on that. And in Smash Accept Listener League 2, congratulations to Rob Ross, who he was the number 1 seed the whole year as well and did take it down. So congratulations to both of you guys. We do have Smash Accept Listener League 3 will be starting up. I already have like 5 or 6 guys that really wanted to get in 1 and 2. And I was like, yo, just keep hitting me up. And they message me every like couple of weeks. And I'm like, we're not drafting yet. Just relax. You know, this is the time of year where we all get sucked into startups and we all keep saying we don't want to do that, you know, but I'm having a hard time not doing it. Mung, how you doing, man? It's been a while. You know, we got obviously a lot of things going on here with playoff football, but how did your season end and what's going on with you?
Hey, what's going on, guys? You can find me on Twitter at FFA_Mung. That's MENG. I did not win the Smash Accept Listener League.
That's a crime. You can hear it in the background. You know,
but my team, I think, is pretty well positioned for 2022 and beyond. So we'll see about that. Went to the dentist, so starting off the year with a bang.
Okay.
Lots of exciting stuff going on, but yeah, excited for more playoff football this coming weekend, and excited to talk about more dynasty trades. A lot of you guys have been hitting me up in the DMs already with the off-season trades, so I'm trying to respond to as many as possible. But yeah, it's been a good week.
Yeah, and that's the awesome part is people are jumping in there in the DMs. I was talking backstage where, I mean, I've gotten over 100 of them this week where people are just throwing trades out there. And one of them, you know, was from our new Smash Accept crew member. You know, we're going to have a couple. We had the old faces, the 3 of us, and now we got some new faces. So you might know him on Twitter as Optimistic Vikings Fan. Welcome to the podcast, Ian Paraguay. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me. You guys have always helped me with so many trades, and you know, me and Mike have been going back and forth this week with some of his trades that he's been looking at too. And you know, my resume is 9 dynasty leagues and ended up winning 4 this year, and was in the championship in 6. So that's about as good as you can get, I feel like. You know, I'm in a couple 14-teamers. I'm in one 16-teamer. That's the worst. I kind of hate it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because you just there's no way. At least one of your starters is out every single week. And you're starting like you're hoping James White plays. You're like, please.
Yeah, nobody likes those. You know, it kind of gets trickier and trickier. And every year, I think we try to take on new challenges, right? We try to take on, you know, I got a lot of people being like, yo, Dad, why don't you play Debbie with me? And I'm like, I'm not ready to go there yet. And people are like, let's try the 14 team. Let's try the 16 team. Let's just keep trying to change it a little bit. And you know, sometimes you got to find that zone which is comfortable and fun for you. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit, you know, more about some of the other things that you might have done in the past relating football, relating your fantasy story, you know, and on how long you've been playing. I mean, you and I were talking, we've been playing for quite some time.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I obviously, based off my handle, optimistic Vikings fan through and through. I'm the nerd that actually has a Vikings tattoo on my shoulder. So like, I can't change fandom as much as sometimes I might want to, because the Vikings, it's hard to love, but you got to love them still. So I wrote a little bit for a Vikings blog called Vikings Territory. Did a little work with them. That kind of fell by the wayside when I got a raise at my physical job, not fantasy job. And so that kind of fell by the wayside, unfortunately. As far as, fantasy football dynasty, I've been playing probably close to 6 years now. And fantasy football, I've been going back to the days where you didn't have it on the computer. You had to physically score it on sheets. And Mike and I were talking about how, when you commission one of those leagues, it's Sunday night and people are already asking who won. And you're like, I need till Friday, please. Hold on. Like, it's math. Like, you want me to do math. You say you don't use math in life. I do.
There you go. John, this year, and he alluded to it, I mean, this year was crazy, right? Like, this year was absolutely insane. And we want to end this out right. We would end it with the Smashies. This is always one of my favorite episodes because we just get to sit back and look at it. And who are the surprises, the letdowns, the takeaways at the positions, your favorite moments, our must-haves for 2022. And, I know you got a lot going on your plate, but this has been a crazy year for you, not just fantasy, but in real life. And things are just like wild right now when it comes to football, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It feels like an understatement. Just both of our lives have been a little wild. One of the reasons we're bringing in some new talent like Ian here to join the crew, to make sure we can keep this thing going and help that community out there. But, the season for sure has to rank up there with one of the wildest fantasy seasons anyone's ever experienced. It somehow got worse than last year with COVID, with more and more players out. I think part of that was, the players were actually getting out more this year on the weekends, and just there were weeks where you're looking at this like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get a starting lineup in there? And of course the inevitable injuries. And so there were times where it felt like a grind, but I got to say, like, in the end there, with the fantasy playoffs and just all the fun and camaraderie and competition, I loved it. And ended up working out pretty well. Won a few of my most important leagues to me, including this Smash League. And so now we have playoff football that we can enjoy without the anxiety that comes with what this season was like, right?
Exactly. And there's been, obviously, surprise, we were going to podcast last week. I got COVID. One of our new members, Abe from DFS Docket, was going to come on with Mung and I tomorrow. Now he's got it, so we got a lot of things. It's just been crazy. But let's jump right into this podcast. Let's talk about these quarterbacks. The biggest surprises for you guys this year. Ian, we're going to start with you because coming down the stretch, this guy in the middle of the season was right there neck and neck. And shout out to one of my guys, Jordan Rump, who we were talking about trading for this guy all year long. And I'm like, listen, he's putting up the same amount of points as Kirk Cousins at the halfway point. But this guy really won people some fantasy championships, and your guy is
Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow won championships for people, and I think I know that there were people selling him like for nothing before the season started because there were those rumors. Oh, maybe he's not going to come back from the injury the same. Maybe he's not going to be the same kind of quarterback that he was. Even though he only played half of last season, I think he was still pretty good last season. But this year, he definitely won you some championships, especially if you were able to get a stack with someone like Jamar Chase or even T. Higgins. Like, if you could get that stack in there, especially, the semifinal, the final, like, those were arguably his best weeks, and he won those championships for you. But I'm going to actually sneak one in for you, Mike, because
okay.
And one I forgot to write down and tell you, but this player got me into a lot of playoffs when I was struggling to get there, and that's Tyler Huntley. Huntley, like those 3 weeks right before the playoffs started, he won you those games if you're able to get him off the waiver wire. No one had him. Actually, I did in my 16-team league because you just got to stash it and hope for the best in those. But Tyler Huntley really got you into the playoffs if you were able to get him there. And that was a huge surprise. I know I know in one league, someone else got him off the wire because he bid more than me. And then I got him for a 4th round pick. So
you stole that because after week 15, I started him. And then I actually lost, believe it or not. But I traded him in both Smash Accept Listener leagues and another one. Both the Smashes, I got a second for him. And in my home league, I got a first. I was like, wow. I was shocked, and it was fantastic. So that's a good one to add in there. Mung, along those same lines, I mean, we're talking about young quarterbacks, guys that are coming up. Who surprised you this year?
Yeah, for me, a pleasant surprise for both myself and Texans fans was Davis Mills. Certainly had some rough stretches in his first few starts, but he faced a tough schedule. And then also Tyrod Taylor came back for a stretch. But the last few games that Davis Mills starts, he got 5 consecutive starts to end the year, 68% completion rate, over 250 passing yards per game, and 9 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. Now, I'm not going to say that Davis Mills is going to be a superstar by any means, and certainly there's risk with David Culley gone and a new regime incoming, but there's upside for Davis Mills if you're looking to take a shot on a quarterback for 2022 in Superflex and 2 quarterback leagues.
Yeah, and I think with all that change, I mean, that's going to be – he definitely has a shot to start next year. You know what I mean? I feel like there's that possibility there, and I think people all offseason are going to be, will he, won't he? And you could probably get him. I mean, I drafted him in late seconds in Superflex, and I feel like you could probably still get him for a second-round pick, and that could be a guy that goes out there and performs for you. Guys that you can't get for a second-round pick, and John, your surprises aren't really surprises, but are they surprises? I mean, why do they got surprises for these two guys?
I'm going to go on the other end of the spectrum and talk about the vets out there. And don't hold this one against me, Ian, but Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. And it really, we expected them to have good seasons, but everyone, remember, was talking about there's no way that Aaron Rodgers was going to be able to sustain what he did in his MVP season last year. Tom Brady was getting up there. How is he really going to be able to keep it going after the Super Bowl? You know, there were some fanboys. Mung was really high on Tom Brady. I was actually still pumping Aaron Rodgers, but I have to admit, I was still surprised they both finished safely inside the top 5 in just about any scoring format. They're both now the leading candidates for MVP this season. Both have their teams well positioned in the playoffs. And so that was surprising to me that in really this strategy that's building around, you can really ride with veteran QBs in your dynasty leagues. And I'm looking at my championship teams and they all have veteran quarterbacks. So I think that's actually a strategy to really consider and not being quite too dependent on the young guns. They've done studies, 60% of the time.
It works every time. I love it.
And John, you also have to look at the fact that a week before the preseason, we weren't sure Aaron Rodgers was even going to play this year.
Exactly. Totally.
So,
there was some value buys. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. And I mean, look, we did the startup early on for the Smash Leagues well before really the off season got going last season. And I actually traded up in the draft to get Tom Brady. And remember, there was a lot of risk. Like, this guy might just have one more season left in him. But again, that's the surprise for me. He still looks fantastic. And you could see him keeping it going again next season. And, we don't really know where Aaron Rodgers is going to be, but you can see these guys still playing, in Rodgers' case, maybe years to come.
Always start Rodgers, right, buddy? Well, that moves me to my next thing is our takeaway from this year, right? And they're all very similar to what we're saying. Ian says, don't doubt Tom Brady again, And John, you said ride the vets. And I had a similar type thing with ride the vets, and I called it like the Kirk Cousins effect. We all want those sexy, big-name quarterbacks. And yes, Josh Allen is my most owned quarterback, but I got him out of the rookie drafts, and you get those guys. And you pair those with the Kirk Cousins, with the Aaron Rodgers, with the Tom Brady, with the Matthew Stafford, who you can get a little bit on the cheaper end, and those are the guys that win you championships, especially when you go to those 6-point passing touchdowns. I mean, I know, John, you and I have talked. I mean, when it comes to quarterbacks, I don't have a lot of diversity. I have Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Matthew Stafford, and Aaron Rodgers on all my teams, and that's basically it. Now that you and I made a Kyler Murray trade, I diversified my portfolio a little bit.
Right.
But it's like, sometimes we can get those guys at a discount, and it's those flashy names. Because when we do a startup right now, 6 of those top quarterbacks are going to go in that first round, but you can wait several rounds to get some of these other guys, these veteran guys that can really take you up, and it has a lot to do with your team build. Mung, you had an interesting take when it was your biggest takeaway from this year is looking at the quarterback position. What was that for you?
Yeah, and to preface, I've always said that I am not a film scout. I do look at film, but I also strongly consider other people's recommendations. And really, what it comes down to is we all know that talent is more important than situation when it comes to weighing dynasty assets. But at the same time, I'm starting to get the feel that surrounding talent and then coaching and having a solid organization around quarterbacks is more important than it is for other positions. We just saw how awful Trevor Lawrence was with Urban Meyer and really no supporting cast. And we saw Mac Jones stepping right into an offense behind a top 5 offensive line, a veteran offensive coordinator. And I really do think that these are factors that we need to consider a little more heavily for quarterbacks versus other positions going forward in Dynasty.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, all of us pretty much have Trevor Lawrence as one of our biggest letdowns. And we're talking guy we're saying generational talent, and I expected more of year one Peyton Manning than what we saw, right? I expected a lot of bumps and bruises. I expected 30 touchdowns, but I expected 20-some interceptions. I expected a season where we were going to see some of that. And towards the end of the year, we were going to see him do kind of what Joe Burrow did and just really start to tear it up, and I feel like
you're forgetting his last game. You're forgetting
that last one just to beat the Colts, that. But the thing to me is, and I also have this as my biggest must-have for 2022 is I'm going out there and I'm making offers for Trevor Lawrence because right now on the Dynasty Trade Calculator, the difference between Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones. Anybody want to guess how much you'd have to pay on top of Mac Jones to get Trevor Lawrence?
Maybe like a second.
A third. A 2023 2023 third. They are literally separated by like 2 points. So you can get, I'm not saying I have not seen that deal anywhere, but I trust DTC. They always put out great content. They do things like that. But I am seeing some situations here where, my must-haves for 2022 are guys that I think I can buy lower than I'm ever going to be able to buy them. And that's Lamar Jackson after the end of this past season. That's Trevor Lawrence, and that's Deshaun Watson while those news are still there for me. Those are the guys that I think are must-haves for 2022 because they're never going to be cheaper than this, John. This is the rock bottom price for players like that. And I know, what are you guys willing to do with Lawrence? I talk about it a lot, where I'm taking a guy like Allen and I traded back who I don't think is with you to get Kyler Murray, who I don't think is the same type, fantasy ceiling, but taking guys like Kyler Murray then and moving back to said player. What are some moves? Are you guys interested in going after Lawrence? Are you guys going to kick the tires at all after what we saw this past season?
Yeah, I'll jump in here on this one. I think this is a really good discussion because we're all going to be looking at our rookie picks, seeing what we had left over. And I still believe Trevor Lawrence to be a tier above any of the incoming quarterbacks. And, we're going to have a smash offseason program, let some of our new talent come in and set up some of the guests, just like we did last season, where we're talking about both the talent and the landing spot to Monk's point and what QBs are going to be coming into good situation. I just can't imagine any of the current 22 rookie QBs coming into the league that I would pay for over Lawrence. So when you think about Superflex picks, I'd be careful. I would still value Trevor Lawrence slightly above any of the incoming quarterbacks. So that's one thing to consider right away. This past rookie quarterback class, while they did have their struggles, we knew they would. They still, in my mind, are just a clear step above what's coming in for 22.
Ian, I am so. When we look at things, I will go out there and I'll make those risky moves. So I believe in a guy like Trevor Lawrence. Sometimes we talked before, like on one trade that you had, Mung might be a little bit more risk averse. Where do you fall in this? And is Trevor Lawrence a guy that, we all have him as our biggest disappointment, our biggest letdown for this season? Are you going after him and trusting the talent that you saw, what you saw in college, and hoping that we get another coach in here, we get another situation, or is this going to continue a little bit?
I think if you were going to go after him, it probably would have been smart to go after midseason when he was showing how bad he was. Now he had that one good game, and those people even preseason were like, oh, that's the Lawrence we knew, and are high on him again. So I don't know if you're going to be able to buy him as easily after that one game. I know it's just one game.
That's all we were looking for, right? We wanted it all year. It felt like at any point that was going to happen, and we just didn't get that big game until the end.
Well, and you also have to think about not only the situation with Urban Meyer, but the fact that arguably who was going to be his number one target, and DJ Chark, went down for the season too. So there was a lot of knocks on his season.
Yeah, lost ETN as well in that offense.
Like, who knows how that would have worked with Urban Meyer, though? Let's be honest. But I think that Trevor Lawrence is a buy, but I think I would also be a little careful because I think that his price did go up after that last week of the season. And I think that they're really going to build their defense up, which is only going to help Trevor as well.
The other guy I had as a letdown for me was Fields. I had Fields neck and neck with the guy that you guys all have as your must-have for 2022. Mung, this is the year of Trey Lance? This is it now, right?
Yeah,
this is
baby.
it.
I mean, you wouldn't have to worry about Trevor Lawrence if you took Trey Lance. That's all I'm saying. But, I mean, as far as Lawrence goes, the problem was, as Ian alluded to, he's throwing to LaVisca Chenault and the corpse of Marvin Jones and, Laquan Treadwell here.
Yo, Treadwell resurgence, baby.
And Dan Arnold halfway through the season.
Ooh, the Dan Arnold.
Another Dan Arnold reference.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, the biggest problem is gone, right? Urban Meyer was the biggest concern as far as Trevor Lawrence's dynasty value was concerned. So I think, he's a buy. But the problem, I think, is most people who drafted Trevor Lawrence with Urban Meyer gone are still high on him. It's only been one disappointing season. I think the pre-draft expectations for Lawrence are still there in the minds of many, especially those who have him on the roster. So I don't think you're getting him cheap. So sure, if you can get him for a lot cheaper than what he went for last offseason, then he's a buy. But I don't think that that's going to be the case in a lot of leagues.
I would wait till week 1 of the season. If he has a really crappy game, that's when you buy, because then the people are like, "Oh crap, this again." That's when you buy.
Trey Lance right now. I'm talking to a buddy of mine who's doing a startup. Is going at QB7. I know you guys all have him as the must-have guy there, but it still feels a little rich for me. Mung, am I crazy? I haven't adapted yet enough what we've seen from Trey Lance and what you anticipate to happen next year.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy for me. I'm in the process of updating my dynasty rankings right now. I'll have some updated ones out in a couple weeks, but QB7, that's insane to me. I have him at QB6.
Okay.
I have him over.
Wow.
I have Trey Lance ranked over Joe Burrow right now. If you can sell Joe Burrow for Trey Lance plus, I'm 100% doing that in Superflex formats. We know.
I think we'll be talking about this one all off season.
That's fine. I mean, you talk about those insulated trades. At the end of the day, look, the rushing production is going to be so important for Trey Lance and Justin Fields. Joe Burrow had those massive, massive games to end the season. Yeah. But at the same time, he had an inconsistent year. He had some down weeks.
But right now, Joe Burrow is hot. I mean, I have a team that he's my QB3, and people are like valuing him over the other guys I have, and that's Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. And they're like, no, I want Burrow. And that's crazy. And maybe he took a step forward. We're looking at, he's playing ranked the 32nd and the 27th ranked defenses when it comes to the pass against those 2 weeks. But that is also my favorite moment, my favorite quarterback moment. And John, you and I were texting that week. I said, listen, I am in, 13 semifinals. I'm just going to go watch Spider-Man with my kids, and I'm just going to go not be stressed out. I'm going to go enjoy the day. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching a movie with my kids, and all of a sudden my phone's just blowing up nonstop. Like, it is literally just vibrating. I'm like, I shut it off, and I come out and I have 32 messages, and they all just say Joe Burrow ! And I'm like, is that good? Is that bad? I don't know what's going on, right? Only to come out and see the dude posted 524 yards and 4 touchdowns, and then the championship 446 and 4, and that's going to be on a lot of fantasy owners' minds. And I think, Mung, that is, if you're not a huge Joe Burrow guy, that's the time where you're going to get some peak value for sure.
What do you think? I like Burrow a lot. He's my QB7 in Dynasty. Right?
But I think if you're going to buy Trey Lance at QB6 or QB7, we have to wait to see what happens with the 49ers in the playoffs. Because if Jimmy Garoppolo goes and wins them a Super Bowl, Trey Lance is on the bench next year.
I think Garoppolo is getting cut regardless. But
if they win the Super Bowl,
it's going to be a tough situation. That's for sure. What was your favorite moment this year, quarterback wise? Ian, I thought you had a great one that I thought was just great for the NFL.
Yeah. Cam returning to Carolina. I know it was that first game was kind of special, but it was a letdown overall. But Cam going back to Carolina was just a really cool moment. And that first game that he played back for them was
awesome. Just coming back to his old team. John, talk about the catch.
Yeah, possible catch of the year actually goes to a quarterback, Daniel Jones. Did his best OBJ impression, one-handed catch in this game. And I loved the whole moment because all of a sudden we saw all the Twitter's memes coming and the side-by-sides with OBJ and Daniel Jones happened on a trick play. But for me, that ended up being the most memorable play for a quarterback of the season. Go check that one out. I'm actually going to post all of my favorite plays here to my account here after the show.
Did it redeem Daniel Jones from tripping?
Absolutely not. No.
We had that on last year. That was our thing last year. That was one of our top ones I tried to put in there.
Yeah, and he'll never live down his 2021 season either. Right?
Yo, but that was one of the fastest quarterback times before he wiped out. That Abe said a little shout out there. And Mung, Brady has all those weapons, right? Your favorite touchdown pass was to his primary target, right?
Yeah, look, I know it's boring, but I'll be a homer. That overtime win over the Bills when he found Rashad Perriman, even though Perriman was supposed to be running interference for the game winner, just brought a lot of joy to me. That's all I can say.
There we
Hell
go.
of a play, yeah.
It was, and we're going to move over to the running backs. The biggest surprises here. We're talking about a throwback from Rashad Perriman. John, you had a 2018 resurgence of some players. Was your biggest surprise here down the stretch?
Yeah, this is wild. These 2018 running backs had all pretty much been written off. I'm talking about Rashad Penny. Who ended up being one of the absolute stars of the 2021 fantasy playoffs here. I know I had to face him, against Jake in the Smash League playoffs, and I was sweating it because he was just dropping yardage, touchdowns. He became that guy in Seattle. And then it was Sony Michel. Finally got the opportunity. We knew, and we talked about him on the pod being a valuable handcuff, and look what happened. I was actually starting him on teams in championships because LA really committed to the run. They went with that power run game, and Sony was the last man standing there. I think we'll have to adjust now that Cam Akers is coming back, but Sony Michel, Rashad Penny, and I think there was even some sightings of Royce Freeman. And so that was by far the biggest surprise because, these guys were on waiver wires just a couple weeks prior to that. It's wild.
Well, and let's shift over to that. Like, our takeaways here were pretty much all the same. Ian said about Dallas being in a committee, and John, yours and mine were the same, as making sure we have that running back depth. And I think we talked about that, from the midseason on, about building around those wide receivers, but having that running back depth, having those Rashad Pennies, those Sony Michels, those Tony Pollards, those guys that really, if given the opportunity, are like an extra lottery ticket. They're just something to hold on to. And then when you get into those fantasy playoffs and you got Austin Eckler gets COVID, you got Justin Jackson going out there putting up 34 fantasy points and winning you championships, and it's like, that is something that, year in and year out, a lot of teams try to take those lottery ticket wide receivers, right? Those guys that get drafted in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. And we had a lot of analysts come on and say those day 3 wide receivers, what kind of hit rate those guys have, where you can have a RB2, a guy in the background who can jump in there and win you a league. We're not looking at guys like Anthony Schwartz winning us championships. We're looking at guys like Sony Michel coming through in the clutch, guys.
Yeah, running back depth is essential. Look at guys, like James Conner and Rashad Penny. You couldn't give those guys away for a 3rd-round rookie pick last offseason, right?
Amazing.
People were just remembering the recent injuries. And obviously the risk was there for both of them. But at the same time, for a 3rd-round rookie pick, the hit rate is so low. And 2 guys that I'm going to target for cheap this offseason, I know that this is going to bring disgust into people's mouths right now. They don't want to hear these names, but Zach Moss and Trey Sermon, right? Both of them flamed out. We had high expectations for these guys coming in, but they're one ankle twist away from Singletary or Elijah Mitchell.
From Jeff Wilson takeover.
Okay.
No, no, I'm just messing with you. You knew that was coming. No, and that's
the
a
Bills
great.
are going Matt Breida though. Like I don't know if you can.
Yeah,
Zach
dude,
Moss
I'm a Bills fan, so this
They're
Devin
cheap, though.
Singletary
I'm
resurgence
with
is
Mung on
crazy.
this. Yeah.
and Bills might draft a running back too.
Yeah, and this is the riskiest time, but you can also get the cheapest value when it comes to these veteran running backs. You know, I just bought, and this is, I don't want to jump around too much because he's my biggest surprise and he's one of my biggest buys is Leonard Fournette. I just bought Leonard Fournette for a second-round pick. I mean, I don't understand what they expect to get for that second-round pick, but if Leonard Fournette comes back to the Bucs, he was a top 8 running back. He was an absolute beast. He's coming back this week. You know, he's going to be healthy. If they bring him back, we're looking at another potential RB1 that you can get for a second-round pick. James Conner's another guy that you brought up, and we said to buy him down the stretch. James Conner, you know, his contract is up here, but you talked about what if he goes to Buffalo? What if he stays in Arizona? What if he goes, you know, there's a lot of opportunities out there. There aren't a ton of, you know, positions open at running back, but these are the kind of guys and the moves that you can make on the cheap end now because everybody's starting to get that rookie fever, right? They just want that second round pick. They want to be able to take that next wide receiver that's going to sit on their bench for a while. I'll take Leonard Fournette.
Well, and I think, you know, depth absolutely matters at the running back position, but at the same time, opportunity is king.
Yeah,
100%.
Oh, for sure.
Like, and the fact that, you know,
we're not saying Devontae Booker's better than these guys, but he's getting the opportunity, right?
But like last year's startup drafts, Tony Pollard was getting taken in front of James Conner, and when James Conner was the clear-cut starter, and so opportunity is king, and James Conner finished as running back 5. Yeah, like I think we're still writing him off.
You can get those guys so cheap. Another guy right now, and Mung and I keep talking about him all the time, is Melvin Gordon. People are acting like he's done. Melvin Gordon was still a viable flex play. If he goes to Atlanta and they you know, if he goes somewhere and gets a starting job, or even if he stays there, he's still worth that late second round pick. He's a guy that's going to go out there and put up points for you. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from me is like, let's not write these guys off. Let's not take these, you know, get that rookie fever so much that we're just going to be like, you know, I don't even want, because I had one guy message me. He's like, yo, Dad, I offered him any second in 2022 and 23. Nobody wants it. So I'm considering taking the 304. What is that 304 going to do for you compared to what Melvin Gordon might do? You know, it's like, hold on to it, but it doesn't seem like any kind of value that I'm interested in.
I will also say, like, the running back age stuff that we always talk about isn't the same, I feel like, as what it used to be. Like, you look at someone like the resurgence of Cordell Patterson, like, dude is not young and still just killing defenses right now. And so I don't feel like that tread is real. Like the tread on the tires, that really matters. But like the age, don't just look at that age. You got to look at how long they've been a starter, how many runs they have per year, and everything like that too.
Well, and Mung, that was your biggest surprise, right? And we talked about Cordell Patterson buying him all year, and then he did fall down a little bit there towards the end. You know, it's like there is a matter of him having that usage, but he was a big time surprise all year long.
Yep, the original Deebo Samuel. Now Deebo's getting a similar kind of usage, but you know Patterson's a free agent as well, so we'll have to see where he lands, and hopefully, whichever organization takes a shot on him is going to put him at running back, which is probably his ideal position given what we've seen.
John, you pretty much. I mean, we all have almost unanimously the biggest letdown this year has to be Saquon.
Yeah. Pains me to say it. And I'm absolutely, just to be clear, I have not written him off. I think that he's definitely a buy. So be careful with just kind of moving on from him and selling low. You'd be selling low right now on Saquon without a doubt. But we just had this vision of that rookie season, and what he did was incredible. And he just never could get going. You know, my view is he's still not 100%. The Giants' offense was a disaster. We don't really know exactly what's going to now happen with the new coach, GM, quarterback. A lot of uncertainty, but I do still believe in Saquon. And so I'm kind of saying, look, he was the biggest letdown for sure, but I'm not giving up on him at the same time.
No, I'm not giving up, and I know there was in the playoffs I gave up DeAndre Swift for Saquon and what's now going to be the 103. And it was a matter of having that guy in there. Saquon has that ceiling, and Mung and you and I have talked about Saquon a lot. Ian, what's your thought on Saquon Barkley? I mean, are we writing him off way too early?
Oh yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I think he is a buy, but I think that you also have to look at who you might be able to get him in return too, because I know I talked to you about this, Dad. I got a trade where I got Chubb back, where I let Barkley go, and Barkley is a buy for me. But that was it was Chubb and I got Bateman in the deal too, and so it was something that just because he's a buy, that doesn't mean you don't sell. Price, right?
No, everything's price dependent.
I think that's what a lot of people get confused when we say buy. It's buy for the right price. It's
all price dependent. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Always.
Maybe give up a little bit more than what you normally would, but don't give up so much more that it's ridiculous. I think Barkley will get better, like you said, John, with new coaching, with new GM, hopefully some offensive line pieces. I think I could be totally wrong, but I'm pretty sure they have a ton of cap so that they can work with. So they can do some stuff there. I don't think that, they're going to necessarily be the greatest offense next year anyways. But I think that Barkley will improve, but I think next year could also be a somewhat disappointing season. But again, that doesn't mean that he's not going to be a buy after next season too.
Well, and I think, and I gotta, that trade that you went through, we worked through it. And I think the biggest thing is going to the Saquon Barkley owner and saying, I got some interest. What can we do here? Because you don't know, we don't want to make a blind offer for a guy like Saquon Barkley right now. You make a blind offer and you overpay, see what he's interested in, see what kind of moves you can make, because some Saquon or Barkley owners, like myself, I'm not going to pay 50, I'm not going to give him up for 50 cents on the dollar. But some of them, they're frustrated. They've had enough. Maybe they want, player X, and then you can kind of get some things. And you ended up working that into, what I would consider as a smash accept, and it was a nice trade. But started out there, if you're interested, I put in the notes, maybe it's because I'm such a, Penn State fan and just loved watching him in that rookie year was so phenomenal. It's he didn't pass the eye test this year. And that's the scary thing to me is I love Saquon Barkley. He just looked zapped to some juice. And is it because he came back too soon? Is it because, he's coming off an injury there? There's so many things. And in Dynasty, we tell ourselves narratives, right? All the time, I'm telling myself a narrative that he's going to bounce back because of certain situations, and new coaching coming in and all those different things. Other people are telling themselves the narrative that he's washed. So, sometimes this time of year, it's a matter of approaching the owner, not throwing out blind offers. We know some people that send out 60, 70 a week. Go out there and just message those guys in your league and just say, hey, what you want for Saquon? Let's get some dialogue here started and let's move forward. Mung, your biggest letdown, guy that definitely let me down as well, was not Saquon, but yours was a little different.
Yeah, excuse me. And, Aaron Jones really wasn't what we expected when we drafted him down the stretch. We saw really a 50-50 split between him and A.J. Dillon. It was kind of baffling to begin with, the Packers re-signing Aaron Jones when they had Dillon waiting in the wings. And there's a lot of risk for all the Green Bay players with the Aaron Rodgers situation unresolved heading into next year. But it's really hard to see Aaron Jones being more than the 1A in a committee going forward. And he'll have to be super, super efficient in touchdowns to crack the top 12 fantasy running backs next year.
Absolutely.
As a Vikings fan, I love that they extended him.
These are all RB2 values in many ways right now. That's the thing, to your point. It's a good time to make offers on these guys at the same time.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Our biggest moments, and let's talk real quick. Just jump in there, throw it out there. What was your biggest moment? What was that moment for a running back this year that you were just yeah, that's what I'm talking about?
I was talking about D'Ernest Johnson's first game to everybody. His
Me too. I love it.
His fantasy point total was more than Chubb has gotten in his career. Still, that's how crazy that point total was for him, and I was ecstatic.
I picked him up in FFPC Pros versus Joes. little humble brag, I won that one. So Smash Accept, we're back up on there, over RotoViz, over Dynasty Trade Calculator, over all those Trades HQ. Smash Accept's up at the top. No, but I mean, Dernis Johnson was a guy I picked up off of waivers that week, and he just went nuts. So, I mean, and we've talked about it. Next man up. If he ever gets those opportunities again, he definitely does it. John, mine was
story though too. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, go ahead.
Like his like story.
His whole story is amazing.
Is insane. And did anyone know it before they were like watching that game? Like it's such like a Cinderella story. Like it was just absolutely amazing to watch.
John, I needed this one in my fantasy league, and this was a huge one. This is the one that, like, this was the biggest moment of me jumping out of my chair and just going nuts.
This is where you just jump up and, like, spill the popcorn flying everywhere.
All over the place.
Yelling and running around the house. This is the Jonathan Taylor 67-yard run against the Patriots. There was 2 minutes left in the game, and it was funny. I went and rewatched it. The announcer said, well, they're holding the lead, but let's see if they can put them away, and then bam! There goes JT.
I know, I loved it.
He's
I went
taking
nuts.
off. He's running. And actually, I went and looked even to see a little bit more after the game was over. And he actually looks back like this. And apparently he was looking at the sideline to see if the coaches wanted him to go down. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, I know.
And he outruns everybody. But this was the year, too, that Jonathan Taylor cemented himself as the clear RB1, like in a tier of his own now, heading into the offseason. That's absolutely the case. I'll fight anyone that says otherwise, at least for running backs. And he's really just become just like this darling for Dynasty fantasy football. And it was moments like that everybody just kind of loved to see that,
I loved
I had a
it.
friend like 15 seconds before it happened. He tweeted out, could really use a 70-yard Jonathan Taylor TD run right now.
Right. That's love it.
So he tweeted it like every 15 seconds the next week. Just
keep it going.
All right. How about now?
John, when we have and another one of my favorite episodes is always our hot takes, and last year my hot take was Alvin Kamara was going to be the RB1. This year it was Jonathan Taylor. That's 2 for 2, baby. We got to see who the RB1 is going to be next year.
That's
so we'll keep that going.
Yeah. Tune in to hear that one for the listeners.
And for the must-haves, I mean, maybe it's this guy, Mung. Your must-have going into 2022, everybody's new Twitter darling is...
Yeah, Javonte Williams.
No doubt.
I'll be the first to admit I was wrong. I was a little bit lower on him than consensus last offseason, but just looking at him run, he is amazing. Melvin Gordon, we talked about this season. I was very low on Javonte Williams in redraft. I did not expect them to go away from Gordon because of the amount that they were paying him and also because Williams was a rookie. But heading into 2022 with the possibility that Gordon could be gone next season, they might still bring somebody in, but I fully expect Williams to be the lead back for Denver with a potential quarterback upgrade. He has a chance to be an elite top 5 fantasy back.
Yeah, good luck buying him.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I talked about that startup. He is going at the RB2 right now. So, the price is up there. And when you look at Pro Football Focus's most forced missed tackles per touch among all running backs, the guy that you're buying is number 2, with 0.29. The guy I'm buying at a fraction of the cost right now is at 0.3, led the NFL this year, Michael Carter. I feel like you can get Michael Carter very, very cheap. You can get him for a late first. And Ian, you put out a thread out there, which I loved, and we do that all the time at Smash Accept. And it looked like the consensus on that thread was around the 109 to 111 range is what people are willing to sell Michael Carter for. And I think he showed some flashes, guys. He passed the eye test when he was out there. He put up some numbers. This is a guy, I think, we talk about insulated trades, and I'm not saying trade Javonte Williams, but I think this is a guy where you can give up a player and get Michael Carter in that first, and you're going to end up winning out, especially if it's a 2023.
Well, I think you also have to look at the fact that they played on the same team in college, and Michael Carter was the RB1.
Yeah. They're both fantastic players.
Oh, yeah.
And Javonte is the buy there, and I'm excited for that. John, you were almost the voice of reason here. Mung and I were out on this guy. We were like, because of the injury, but he looked good this week.
Yeah, Cam Akers. Cam Akers has to be somebody that you're looking at for 2022. And we've already seen him do it before. Let's start with that. He has the talent. We were all worried about the injury and the Achilles, and can he really come back from that? But I think he's clearly shown that, yes, you can. He is back. And there's a couple of things that I'll throw in there too that were really great to see, even in the game yesterday, which was he's getting worked into the passing game.
Yeah.
He got actually more than 50% of the workload, even after Sony was doing a hell of a job carrying the load there. And that's the thing that we also saw from McVay was the shift down the stretch to, again, that power running game, focus on the run, establishing the run. And it was the Sony Michel show. And so you can easily see them kind of moving on, recommitting to Cam Akers, getting a nice, healthy workload in a top offense with plenty of scoring opportunities. And so, and again, the value dips so much. I get that some people are catching on now and we're seeing them in live football. So maybe the time was a couple weeks back, but I've seen everything I need to see for me to start buying again, testing the water, seeing what the value looks like.
You can't, man. Like, that was tough. The thing is, like, we were selling Cam Akers for a first. I am seeing Kluge said he sold him for a 105 the other day. I am seeing most of Twitter saying 102, 103. And that just like that. I think that's just insane that it switched that much because we saw one game, right?
Switch.
I mean, we were talking about this is an Achilles injury, so we don't know what kind of, the explosiveness. He did average like 3.2 yards per carry, so it was not explosive by any stretch of the imagination. But Mung, I mean, are we willing to jump back out there? And John, I'm not knocking that at all. I love Cam Akers. I did. I took him in the second round of Smash Accept and nearly cried, when he went down. But are we willing to jump back in and really go in there at something less than the 103 in Superflex?
Yeah, I'm out. Excuse me, I'm out at that price. And you know me, I'm excuse me. I've always been a more risk adverse dynasty player. So I was recommending that you take any first for Cam Akers a couple months back, and obviously he's exceeded all expectations. But the 1 game sample size of him against a bad Cardinals run defense,
that's fair.
Playing 50% of the snaps is vaulting him into early first territory again. That to me is pretty nuts. And quite frankly, right now, I think that in the vast majority of leagues, you could get Saquon Barkley plus for Cam Akers, which is insane to me. And if you can do that, I would do that immediately.
You also have to remember that Darrell Henderson was out of that game too, so that could have added some value to him.
Good point. Mm-hmm. The thing that we talk about all the time, and I know, Ian, I've talked about it, you with rebuilding teams, and we've talked about it before, is buy that injured running back on your rebuilding team. I don't know how many teams where I was in a rebuilding situation where I said to people, sell Aaron Jones for Cam Akers in a first. Seriously, where are you looking at now?
Lower your potential points all year. Yeah,
exactly. Sell Aaron Jones for J.K. Dobbins in a first. Like, people just want to get there. That's another guy that's big for me. I think is going to be another big buy. And we have all offseason. We're just excited here. Let's move on to the wide receivers. Biggest surprises. There's 3 names here, that have to be on there. Mung and I both went with Debo. I mean, Debo's just out there balling out. I love watching Debo. It's just fun to watch. But John and Ian, you guys went a different route there, and maybe not quite as flashy, but man, did these guys win you some championships.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, well, we'll have to say, little humble brag, I wasn't as surprised by Debo, evidenced by how many rosters I have Debo Samuel, including my championship Smash Accept Listener League roster. Just had to work that one in there again. But I really always believed in Debo. He's one of my absolute favorite players. So I have to validate that of course, he exceeded just about everyone's expectations. But my actual biggest surprise was the accountant, your favorite H&R rep, Hunter Renfrow.
H&R block, baby.
Yes.
Time to do those taxes.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
And he looks like he can do them for you.
Helps you win games. And so, I just couldn't believe it. Obviously, a lot of things fell into place there. Like, there was injuries to Darren Waller. It turns out Ruggs had his own issues off the field. And so, that situation may not still be there. But, he was just money in the bank week after week, not sexy. And so when I just look back at the season, I just keep looking at, like, the final rankings, points per game, every way you want to look at it, it was Hunter Renfrow, man.
I was hoping for you to sing My Little Cooper Cup again. Ian, Cooper Cup what?
He was going after Robert Woods in most drafts. I feel like a lot of people had Robert Woods ahead of Cooper Kupp going into the year, and I was one of them. I'll be straight with you. Like, I thought Robert Woods was going to be that guy for Stafford, but Cooper Kupp turned into arguably had one of the greatest wide receiver seasons ever.
No doubt.
And it's just absolutely nuts to me. I will say, okay, you guys talked about Debo. I got to say something really quick about Debo. I read a stat the other day that for Debo Samuel, his yards per carry, if you take that and give him Jonathan Taylor's rushing load,
oh, jeez.
he would have rushed for 2,800 yards.
Yes.
Definitely extrapolate that one. I want to see it next year. Abe put in, he needs that Braxton Berrios love. I mean,
Okay.
he was down the stretch, he had 3 straight games there where he really got it done. And, right off that same H&R block kind of move.
Mm-hmm.
Biggest letdowns. Let's make these a little bit quicker. Mung.
Yeah, I was talking to a couple people about CeeDee Lamb, not only after this Dallas loss, but even prior to that, where the second half of the season, he really disappeared. I don't know how much that bout with COVID had to do with it, but he just really wasn't getting targeted even after Gallup got injured. Mm-hmm. And it's not a good sign. It's not a good sign when Dak Prescott's go-to guy is Cedric Wilson over CeeDee Lamb. We know that the talent is there. We've seen it. But at the same time, targets are earned, and we haven't seen Lamb earn much in the way recently.
It's right there in the insulated trades. I got a question today. A guy said, would you give up CeeDee Lamb for Devonta Smith, the 108 and the 110? And I said, yep, it's done. Devonta Smith is ascending. I said, that's a smash, except that's the kind of move that you make. That's how you win the offseason. I love CeeDee Lamb, and you guys know that. He's one of my biggest guys. John, you're let down.
Yeah, well, I was going to put in first of all, just coming off the fantasy playoffs, Antonio freaking Brown with the meltdown right in the middle of crunch time in fantasy football playoffs. And I think people are never, ever going to forget that. And unfortunately, he had so many years in fantasy where he was king. It's obviously painful for Mung here as a Bucs fan to see that happen, but that cost a lot of people their championships. So that was one. I'm also going to toss in DK Metcalf. I couldn't believe it, but I went back and looked. 25th in points per game in PPR. Are you kidding me? Yeah. And it was very much boom or bust. And so
and that points per game was really brought up by that 3 touchdown game he had there at the end.
Games. Yeah. So I mean,
Ian's going to say a name here, John. Ian's going to say a name that's just going to make you and I both cry here. But go ahead.
It's Jerry Jeudy. He was drafted so high. Yeah. He's still drafted so high. I'm sorry, the Jerry Jeudy love doesn't make sense to me. I was super high on him coming out of the draft, and I was even after last year still like, okay, let's do it. 2 years of disappointment. I just can't do it anymore. And some people are just riding that train still, and I think that he would be a huge sell for me, especially with some people's what they're willing to offer for Jerry Jeudy. But he was such a huge disappointment. He's getting a quarterback. Vikings fan, Teddy Bridgewater can't throw it downfield. I'm sorry, he can't. No. I love the guy. He's the greatest human being in football. But he can't throw downfield at all.
I can't say Jerry Jeudy's a buy low yet because everybody's just holding on to that fact. And I've been trying to make those trades, and try to get.
I think he's the sell high. That's legit. People are buying him way too expensive right now.
2 guys that I love were my biggest letdowns: DeAndre Hopkins and A.J. Brown. I mean, A.J. Brown right now is still being valued as a lot of people still top 2 to 3 dynasty asset. Mm-hmm. I traded, you guys know in season right there at the end, I gave I got Jamar Chase for A.J. Brown in the 112, and I'm perfectly fine with that because I mean you're looking at a guy who's just going to go out there and ball out. But John,
Dad, would you trade CeeDee Lamb for A.J. Brown?
No, I think I'd say Brown, though. What do you guys think? I think I'd still take Brown over Lamb.
Yeah,
I'd take Brown.
I would.
And Mung, I mean, you and I, literally, when this was rookie season, and we were talking people, and we had people on here like Dave Richard, and I mean, we had people where we were literally defending this guy. Jamar Chase just went out there and showed us that he is that dynasty wide receiver 1, and it was just that's your biggest moment.
Wide receiver 2. Don't forget about Justin Jefferson.
Okay, I know we got a Vikings guy in here, and no, that's an arguable thing. That really is. I mean, that is 1A, 1B, 1 and 2, however you look at it. And Jefferson has gone out there and just. He's been peppered. He's been fantastic, and I'm not taking anything away there. I like what you're saying, but that was my transition there to Mung. Your biggest moment was that touchdown catch, right? I mean, that thing was insane.
Yeah, when you looked at the dots that we get from Next Gen Stats, when he had 5 defenders within a couple of yards of him, and then he breaks away for a 70-yard touchdown,
Incredible.
just absolutely incredible. I mean, I remember seeing a tweet from preseason saying that someone wanted Tyler Boyd at cost over Jamar Chase.
Yep. Well, no, Tyler. When we had Dave Richard on, he said Tyler Boyd. It was his hot take. Tyler Boyd will lead this team
that's right.
in fantasy points.
Ouch.
And other people were on here and they're like, no, it's T. Higgins because Jamar Chase is gonna have this drops issue. I'm like, man, if you just went out there and bought during that time when we were telling you to do it,
best all-time buys. Yes.
And here's the thing, Mung, is like, and I love talking to you guys because they're all brilliant fantasy minds and dynasty minds. All 4 of us, when we put this in here, first person put invest in young wide receivers to build around your team. Another person put another rookie in the top 10 will come out this year as well. Build around those youth wide receivers with some, and then I added sprinkle in some cheap veterans. Get those wide receiver 1s and 2s that are young and mix in a Keenan Allen. It doesn't have to be 3 super young guys. And then, Mung, you were like, be early on selling those vets. So, I mean, it looks like in wide receivers, and I think that 2014 class spoiled us, but now those guys are aging, and those are the guys that, Mung, you're talking about trying to get out a year early, and a lot of us didn't. If you got out on DeAndre Hopkins last year, which you guys know we talked about this trade a bunch, where I gave up Hopkins for McLaurin in the 102 and got Najee, now it's a win. Now you can barely get a first for DeAndre Hopkins. It's like, get out of those vets, and we're at that age cliff. People I'm seeing on Twitter, again, referencing Kluge, was like, I don't know if I want Diggs next year. I don't know if I want these guys. And I'm like, on the flip side there, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a lot, those are still studs. So I'm saying in your startup, get your Jamar Chase, get your Justin Jefferson, get your young elite upside wide receivers. But don't forget about those Keenan Allens. You sprinkle those in the end. Just don't have a whole team of Keenan Allens, because a lot of my teams that I'm looking at now, it's Diggs, Allen, Hopkins, Adams, which is sexy 2 years ago. Now it's like starting to lose some of that luster.
And can we talk about the fact that arguably the 2 best wide receivers this season, and Chase and Waddle, sat out their last season in college? Like that's huge to me. Like that's right. Something really to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Waddle's, we all have that as he was on pace to break the reception record. Waddle looks fantastic. And we all have Waddle and Elijah Moore. You and I, Mung, are huge on Elijah Moore. We're talking about those young wide receivers. So let's just talk about this for a couple minutes. We want to build around those young wide receivers. These are the guys that we want to add to our rosters. How do we go about doing that if we miss them in the rookie draft? And how do you look at that going into dynasty startup season?
My other must-have is Darnell Mooney. I think that he's someone that people are way undervaluing, and is still one of those young wide receivers, and people are continually undervaluing him. I don't know if it's just because the Bears offense sucked, but Darnell Mooney is a huge buy for me.
We had Jordan McNamara, and he even referenced Darnell Mooney as the guy that was an outlier. Don't buy Darnell Mooney, and sometimes we build up some of these narratives, and his thing was, you want that day one draft capital. John, talk to me a little bit about this. I want to put a bow on it here a little bit, because this is very important content.
Right. I think if you summarize this, like we're saying, you need to invest in wide receivers in your startup. But the beauty is you can also compete right away in year one, because look, these guys are blowing up on the scene right away.
Yeah.
We saw it with Justin Jefferson. We saw it with Jamar Chase. We're seeing it with Waddle. And we just got to believe in the talent, and for sure get rid of this narrative around, well, what if they skip their senior year? Who cares? And so I think that's really the point, is you can compete right away. But I'm gonna add back what you said. A lot of my championship rosters did have guys that I traded for down the stretch, like a Keenan Allen, which I actually had on my Smash roster, to give you that consistent vet that you might get a little bit cheaper. You find those teams that are worried about his age creeping up, and it could turn into a value buy. So as always, it depends on roster construction, and how you want to build your teams, whether you're competing, whether you want to take some time and rebuild. But bottom line for me is it's such a good investment to go after those young wide receivers in your startup drafts, in your rookie drafts, where possible. So,
I think rookie draft startups now, people are getting it, right? Devontae Adams fell to 306 in that draft that I was talking about, and he was, that is value if you're looking at what he can produce in the next 2 years, depending on how you look at things. you missed the boat on selling Hopkins, and you're missing some boats here on Keenan Allen. Mung, who's that guy you're trying to get out of ahead of time? And that was your comment, and I loved it, and I think it's perfect. People are starting to say that age cliff used to be 29, then it became 28. Now people are saying it's 27. So is that the Tyreek Hills that we're trying to sell?
Yeah, not necessarily Hill, because he is indeed a special talent. But, 2 years ago, we saw the decline for A.J. Green. Last offseason, people were still talking about buying Julio Jones, who I stayed far, far away from.
Mm-hmm.
And this offseason, I've already seen a couple people talking about buying low on guys like Allen Robinson and Michael Thomas, who we know are good wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they're going to be turning 29 this offseason. Even, let's say, for argument's sake, best case scenario, they finish as a top 15, almost top 12 fantasy wide receiver in 2022. But they're going to be turning 30, and best case scenario, you're going to get a late first for them, next offseason, which is pretty much what you are paying right now. So if you're a contender, I think it's fine to take a shot on those guys for an early second, but you're not expecting that value to increase where you're going to be able to do anything with those assets.
I mean, I saw Michael Thomas go for a late 2 in one of my leagues.
I saw him on Twitter, 112. Both of those guys, I'm in a dispersal, and they were going they were going for guys with the equivalent of an early second, and I think both those guys have the upside. I mean, it all just depends. It's very roster dependent, and that's things that we're going to get into. And I'm excited that we got this episode. Let's bang out the tight ends real quick, and let's try to
really quick. Yeah, that wide receiver sell that's going to be that cliff, that DeAndre Hopkins level talent. It's Devontae Adams.
Yeah, no, we had it. I mean, Izzy was saying he was the guy to sell 2 years ago, and it's just like you can still get it for Adams, but it's closing. It's really closing.
He's going to lose Rodgers, so it's going to be done. Like, he's going to fall off a massive cliff.
So my biggest tight end surprise was Mark Andrews, taking over Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce was not the tight end 1 this year. All three of you guys, same time, Dalton Schultz.
Dalton Schultz, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other surprise I had on there, and John, when Waller went down, you and I talked on the phone, and I said, every team I have Waller on, I have Zach Ertz, and Zach Ertz really made a resurgence there. So I think
he really did.
Another surprise. The biggest letdowns, guys, I mean, Mung has Kelce, which, tight end 2 as a letdown, but it wasn't the tight end 1. John, you put Kittle, and man, I'm really starting to I can't stand my teams that have Kittle on them. I'm really trying to move them. And Ian, you and I both put Waller. I mean, Waller now in that startup I was talking about went as tight end 7. So he's starting to become a value in there. But all three of those guys, did not produce what we were necessarily looking for. I'm surprised nobody put Kyle Pitts because he has the best tight end rookie season of all time, but he's a letdown in most of us. One of you guys put your biggest takeaway is the Kyle Pitts rule. Can you further up on that?
Yeah, that was me. And I think it's really just no matter what the pedigree, draft capital, and everything else, you don't overpay for year 1, year 2 tight ends. And if you want to compete, we're seeing something similar happen with TJ Hawkinson right now.
Key word there, right, was if you want to compete. Kyle Pitts is going to be the tight end.
That's really
Kyle Pitts is the tight end 1. You can debate. I still think Mark Andrews is like fantastic right now. Kelce can still throw up in there, but most of the time people are going to say Kyle Pitts. Another rookie that really shined this year that, we say a little bit different mentally thinking of how we look at the tight ends. Ian, you went with somebody different.
Well, yeah, I kind of went on the same thing. Give the rookie tight ends a year or 2 before you really write them off. And that's like, I wrote a few names down. I wrote Komet down. I wrote Irv Smith and then Pat Freiermuth. I think, he had a great season, but next season might be a huge letdown too. And I don't think that means you need to write him off. He could come back and be a huge tight end in year 3. So I think that those young tight ends, you really have to give them a couple years before you write them off either.
Let's move over to, there's not a lot of exciting, we had the Kelce walk-off and some other things, My least favorite tight end moment is those damn Gronk commercials. I'm tired of him trying to get military discounts on his insurance. Like, come on, man. I'm special. What are you doing?
What is the purpose of those commercials either? Everyone that can get USSA has USSA. I don't understand what the purpose of those commercials are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm watching the game with my girlfriend. She's fantastic, and she's like, "What was that?" By the way, John, that's the first I've watched football with Joy, and from her conversation, she told me that Josh Allen is fat, and then during the during the commercial for insurance, told me Patrick Mahomes must have a small penis with that voice. So I'm just saying those are the football takes that she's throwing out there.
Okay.
You know, those are hot takes. But who knows? He's rich. Must-haves going into this season. I'm going to start it out. Guy that I've been down on for years, and you guys have harassed me, but now I believe it's Dallas Goedert. I mean, Dallas Goedert looked fantastic, and if you can still get him, go get him.
Yeah, I like Goddard a lot. A great situation, especially once Ertz left town. And I think he could end up being team lead in targets there in Philly.
I think he's top 5 this year.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then Dawson Knox is the other one I would throw in there too. He's in a great situation in Buffalo. We saw him again. He got 2 more touchdowns in playoff football. I mean, kid's tough, gets open, red zone magnet. So he's been pretty consistent. I mean, he's had some down weeks, but I like that one.
His physical comp, everything about him is very Mark Andrews light, and he looked great this year. What do you guys got?
I think, I mentioned a couple of them, but Irv Smith, I think, is a huge buy, just coming off an injury. I think everybody's forgotten about him. And then, same draft class as TJ Hawkinson, but Noah Fant. Noah Fant is a huge buy for me, just because I think that you can get him for nearly pennies on the dollar right now, because people have been so disappointed with him. But like I said, you got to give him a couple years, and I really think he's going to excel, especially if they get a new QB that can actually sling it.
And Mung, I mean, pennies on the dollar, this guy just can't get any love, right? Like, he has not come around. The dynasty community has not come around on this guy.
Yeah, and I love Mike Gesicki, right? He has all the athletic measurables we want to see in our star fantasy tight ends. He has great hands. We've seen him make some of those Odell Beckham-style one-handed catches down the sideline. The only thing missing thus far in his career has been target volume and an efficient offense. And he's a free agent heading into 2022. So we could potentially see that. And if you do think that he's going to go to a team that's going to use him a lot more as a receiver, then he's a buy right now.
Love it. Guys, I mean, this is the kickoff to the fantasy football, 2022, our dynasty, off season. And last year we had, guys, think about some of the guests we had. I mean, John, who was your favorite guest last year?
Yeah, I have to go with Matt Waldman, who I look up to. I think he's the absolute best when it comes to film. And we had guys like Garrett Price coming on the show and telling us Javonte Williams was his RB1. Now,
I remember that.
On that, right? And
yep.
So many of the most respected analysts that we brought through our Smash offseason program. And so really want to, again, welcome in Ian and welcome in Abe. And I can't wait to see some of the new blood, new talent coming in, joining the Smash crew and helping this community. And so very excited about it.
Yeah, and I mean, this offseason, it's all about having a program, right? And I know not everybody talks about that, but it's like we're bringing in guys to tell you about rookies. And last year we brought in Angelo, and we brought in so many guys really just to come in there and just give you all the different things from the nuances to the draft capital and what that means. And Jordan McNamara was talking about capital and looking at guys at profiles. And I mean, man, we literally set you up to put you into that position, and we were going over the rookies nonstop. And this is going to be, I know people aren't saying this is that class, but don't sleep on the 2022 class. Let's see what we have here. There's a lot of good talent. Monk, closing it out, who was your favorite guest? And I mean, we're Abe and I were talking, and we're really shooting for some big names. And I know Mung, I shot my shot on some last year, got a bunch of them, almost got some of the ones we want. But who was your favorite?
Yeah, I mean, all our guests were excellent, but I really like talking to Angelo, bring a different perspective in terms of those physical measurables, those thresholds that we want to see some of these prospects hit. But there's just a ton of smart people out there in the dynasty and fantasy community at large. We think we're pretty smart, and I think we've all done pretty well in our leagues. But there's always different spins, different takes, and we're all wrong at some point. So it's great to hear other opinions.
I love it.
Don't forget about the Godfather, Ryan McDowell, that we had on.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's been a great year for Smash Accept. I mean, it's been about 16 months since we put this thing together. It's been a fantastic ride, and I'm excited to have, some new blood in here. I know Jeremy, at Pope wants to come on a couple times. Ian, we loved having you on, and we got Abe coming on. I mean, it's an exciting time, and we're really amped for 2022. There was a time there where 2021 was just crawling by for me, and I was like, not quite there, but we're pumped for this now, right? Ian, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter. John Mung and I have told them so many times, they're just like, leave us alone. But why don't you tell them where you're at? And I urge you guys to follow him. I mean, he's put out some thread content. He's put out some things on there. I mean, he's very active, and you can hit him up with trade questions. You always want to hit us up. Hashtag Dynasty, hashtag Smash Accept. We're changing that. Make sure you get those trades out there and let us know what's going on.
Yeah, and you can find me at Super Skull Fan on Twitter, or just look up Optimistic Vikings Fan. That's me as well. Yep, I'm here to answer any questions. My DMs are open.
Love it. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and enjoy the process.